Charge Barbarian is the fastest, strongest, and most destructive build in Season 3, and today I'm bringing you an endgame version of the build that not only is good at level 100, but is absolutely amazing from level 50 to 100 and requires no uniques whatsoever. I combine the AoE power of Charge with Battle Shout, so you can spam Charge infinitely, have constant healing and 100% uptime on Berserking, so your damage goes out of the roof. We combine the power of Charge with Hammer of the Ancients, so not only is our AoE damage crazy, but we also have very respectable single target DPS right out of the gate. So today I'll cover the skill tree for the build, the aspects you need for that build, the gear you want, and the Paragon board for the build as well. This build follows on directly from my previous build for level 1 to 50 for the Charge Barbarian, so if you're lower level than 50, then definitely check out that video first. So let's go over the core gameplay loop of the build. Whenever Charge is off cooldown, use it. It's by far the strongest ability in this build. Thanks to Power Charge, for each enemy you hit, you'll reduce its cooldown by 3 seconds up to a maximum of 9 seconds. Now typically that usually means you'll only need to wait 3 seconds between charge uses, which isn't very much, but thanks to the very first glyph we use on our Paragon board, the Martial glyph, we can actually use 3 to 4 charges back to back without waiting. Whenever we use our Shout skill, our non-Shout skill cooldowns are reduced by a whopping 4 seconds. So after using your charge ability, use one of your Shouts, and then you'll be able to use your charge again, and then keep repeating this, cycling through all 3 of your Shouts so you can use your charge again and again. Thanks to our aspect of Echoing Fury, using these Shouts is also going to generate a ton of fury, which we can use by spamming our Hammer of Ancients, which is great for single target DPS, so it's great for boss encounters or for when the odd enemy is left after using a charge. Our ultimate skill, Wrath of the Berserker, adds the icing to the cake. Whenever we use it, we gain more movement speed, more fury generation, and our berserking damage goes through the roof. Unconstrained, our key passive in the build, boosts berserking's damage bonus a further 100%, and our passive Battle Fervor gives us berserking whenever we damage someone with charge. So you literally are going to have 100% uptime on berserking with this build. The Martial glyph also causes your Shouts to reduce your ultimate skill cooldown, so the synergy here is amazing. Because for the first 10 seconds of an engagement, we can just use our charge back to back to back. We don't need to use any fury generating abilities like Lunging Strike. Our Shouts, the aspects in the build, and for Season 3, our pet all generate so much fury, which I'll explain later, so we don't need to waste a slot on something like Lunging Strike. So let's go over the skill tree in more detail. You want 1 point into Lunging Strike and 1 point into Enhanced Lunging Strike. You do not need anything more than 2 points here, as that's enough to unlock the next portion of the skill tree. I've then put 5 points into Hammer of the Ancients, 1 point into Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients, and 1 point into Furious Hammer of the Ancients. I've then got 1 point into Rallying Cry, 1 point into Enhanced Rallying Cry, 1 into Strategic Rallying Cry, which gives us movement speed, resource generation, unstoppable, and fortify. 1 into Challenging Shout, 1 point into Enhanced Challenging Shout, and 1 point into Tactical Challenging Shout. Then put 2 points into the passive Imposing Presence for more life. 1 point into Warcry, 1 point into Enhanced Warcry for the berserking on cast, 3 points into Booming Voice, and 3 points into Raid Leader for the healing, which while leveling from 50 to 100 is very useful for speeding through dungeons and vaults. 5 points into Charge, 1 point into Enhanced Charge, and 1 point into Power Charge. 3 points into Aggressive Resistance for the damage reduction, so we can put 3 points into Battle Fervor and 3 points into Prolific Fury for more fury generation. 3 points into Pit Fighter, 1 point into Thick Skin, so we can put 3 points into Counter Offensive, 1 point into Wrath of the Berserker, and then a point into each of the modifiers. 3 points into Wallop, and finally 1 point into our key passive, Unconstrained. Let's go over our gear and aspects. As you'll see at the time of making this video, the gear is nowhere near optimized and we use no uniques at all. I'll show you my gear, and I'll also mention the perfect role you should be chasing. For your helmet, I placed the Steadfast Berserker's aspect, which gives us a chance to become fortified on damage whilst berserking. Fortify gives us a 10% damage reduction, which is very useful. In terms of stats, you want cooldown reduction, damage whilst berserking, maximum life, total armor, or maximum fury. With the aspects we use, we hit the armor cap very quickly, which is around 14,000 for max level monsters. So you do not need total armor on more than one piece of your gear, because once your 2 armor aspects kick in, you'll literally double the armor you see on the screen here, which is already overkill. For your chest piece, put the Juggernaut aspect, which provides a massive flat chunk of armor. We don't use evade in the build because charge provides us with amazing mobility anyways. In terms of stats, you want damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction, maximum life, other damage reduction types, or total armor depending on what your other armors roll. For your gloves, I place the aspect of limitless rage, so when we use our HOTA ability at maximum fury, we can increase its damage even further. In terms of stats, you want ranks of Hammer of the Ancients is your #1 priority, and then critical strike chance is closely behind. Then go for attack speed percentage and strength or all stats. For pants, I place the aspect of disobedience for even more armor stacking, and then go for ranks of charge as your #1 priority, damage reduction from close, damage reduction, and maximum life. I'd avoid total armor in this slot. For boots, I place the Ghost Walker aspect, so whenever we're unstoppable, we have even more movement speed, and 3 of our abilities in this build give us unstoppable, so we literally have this up nearly all the time. In terms of armor rolls, you want movement speed here, and then 3 resistances for the ideal roll. Resistances are very important now in Diablo 4, and you ideally want around 60% resistance for all damage types minimum. Fire and poison explosions seem to be the most common in most dungeons and vaults, so I prioritize those resistances on my boots. For your amulet, this is where I place the aspect of ancestral force. This is so we get more Hammer of the Ancients damage, and so HOTA gets more of a cone AoE effect, making it much more usable in general. My amulet has an awful roll, but the stats you want here are cooldown reduction, ranks of brawling skills, ranks of wallop or ranks of heavy-handed, fury cost reduction, and movement speed. For your rings, you want to place the Bold Chieftain's aspect and aspect of echoing fury. This reduces the cooldown of your shout skills and provides lots of fury when you do use your shouts. You ideally want critical strike chance, resource generation, damage whilst berserking, and maximum fury or maximum life for your ring rolls. For your weapons, ideally you want your two-handed bludgeoning weapon to be the weapon you use when you use charge, so it benefits from the wallop passive. HOTA preferentially uses your two-handed mace anyways, so if you do this, it makes it much easier if you focus your highest DPS weapon for your two-handed mace specifically whilst leveling. And then your other weapons are basically stat sticks with aspects on them. So for your two-handed mace, you want damage whilst berserking, all stats, strength, damage against close enemies. I place the Veteran Brawler's aspect here, so after using a few HOTAs, our next charge becomes even stronger. For your one-handed weapons, you want these both to be maces, so we get those massive overpowered damage bonuses. Again, your stat priority is the same, damage whilst berserking, all stats, strength, damage against close enemies. Here I place the Edge Masters and Brawler's aspects specifically. For your two-handed slashing weapon, you want an axe ideally for the damage to healthy enemies bonuses. Then go for the same stat priority again, damage whilst berserking, all stats, strength, damage to close enemies. This is where you place your ancestral charge aspect, which we want to be doubled in damage, which is why we placed it on our two-hander slot, so we can maximize our charge damage. If you want your HOTA to be stronger, swap out the positions of your aspects for your amulet and two-handed mace. But whilst going from 50 to 100, I wanted to give charge as much juice as possible. For your gems, for your armor and weapons, you want rubies. Rubies give percentage overpower damage, and they give percentage life. And then for your jewelry, put on gems that give you resistances against the elements not really covered by your boots. Because my boots give me fire, poison, and shadow resistances, I put on lightning and cold gems on my jewelry slots instead. For your technique, you want the one-hand mace technique, which gives us a 20% damage bonus against stunned enemies, which after using charge, your enemies will be stunned. We do not cause any bleeding in this build, so you do not use the Iron Blood aspect here, as it won't benefit you. If you find yourself struggling with survivability, then swap your one-handed mace expertise for two-handed sword expertise. So you can cause bleeding and then place the Iron Blood aspect on your helmet instead of the other aspect I mentioned, but honestly, I wasn't finding this to be the case. Let's go over the Paragon board briefly. There will be a planner link in the comments below so you can go over it in more detail, but I'll give you guys a brief summary of what you want to unlock and in what order. Start off by placing the Martial Glyph in your first slot. It's the most important glyph for making this build work, so we want to unlock it as quickly as possible. Then place the Bone Breaker board down. This is one of the main ways we cause massive hits with this build when an overpower hits enemies. We overpower every 12 seconds with this legendary node, which is amazing, which is why we stacked all those overpowered damage bonuses. Then unlock the Blood Rage legendary node. This is why damage whilst berserking is one of the most important stats for this build, because it's essentially multiplied by 25% with this Paragon node. I then place the Crusher glyph here, so we cause even more damage with maces and we cause even more overpower damage. Then we want to use the Carnage board and place the Ire glyph, so we gain more damage whilst berserking and 10% damage reduction whilst berserking. Go across and next place the Warbringer board down and place the Exploit glyph here so we do more vulnerable damage. Then go back and get the Decimator board and place the Dominate glyph here. Your final Paragon board will be the Hemorrhage board. Again, you don't unlock the legendary node here, but you just place the Brawler glyph for even more charge damage. Don't worry, the planner will have the complete Paragon guide. Your pet is actually really powerful, so I highly recommend leveling from 50 to 100 in Nightmare Vault rather than regular dungeons or overworld, so you can level up your stones at the same time. You want Flash of Adrenaline with tactical support, duration support, and initiative support, so you have a constant damage bonus applied to you. Then you want to use Tempest with swift support, resource support, and safeguard support. So your Tempest fires every 0.7 seconds now, and you get Fury and even more damage reduction really quickly. So there you have it, my level 50 to 100 and beyond charge HOTA build that will have you destroying absolutely everything in sight and requires no uniques whatsoever. At level 100, a more HOTA focused build does become more powerful once your focus goes towards bossing and you start adding more uniques and perfect gear into the mix. But for level 50 to 100 especially, focusing on charge is just way more fun and way quicker to speed through dungeons with. If you enjoyed what I talked about today, remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel for more Diablo build videos. I'm Mr. Ronit, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.